Sorry again for the lateness that this is arriving to you. Um, just last week was just ridiculously dumb, and has it took me out of the loop really badly. This is not how I usually operate, and it bugs me that it is the case that it is this way right now. Particularly since this particular week is a bit of a short one because everything has to be done on Friday in order for us to get grades in time. So you got a shortened amount of time to work on this. And so I apologize that I sort of stole an additional day from you. But anyway, this is going to be the final project. And maybe the fact that there are fewer days will work out for you because so many of these choices are going to be yours, right? I'm not going to put sort of a lot of restrictions on you. So your final project must be a series of photographs, no less than 6. I meant to put that on there. No less than 6 photographs that communicate a concept that you're interested in. You'll design this project for yourself by choosing the genre. And I'm giving you 2 genres to choose from. You can either go with documentary photography or narrative photography. When we look at the examples from past students, I'll help you sort of differentiate between the 2 of these. The subject will be up to you. Whether you edit in color or black and white is up to you. Whether you use controlled or available lighting is up to you. The number of images in the series, like I said, with a minimum of 6. You know what? Let's make it 5. Let's make it 5 since you are on a time crunch. So a minimum of 5. Your process for taking the photos and what elements you will keep consistent within the series. I'll talk about that in depth as well. However, these decisions should be based on how to best communicate your particular concept. And again, as I say, this is going to be due Friday, July 1st. I'll make it due at like midnight, or like 11:59 p.m. So that you've got that entire day to work on it if you need to. All right. So what exactly is a concept? A concept in art is not unlike the notion of theme, like what you explored in your portrait series. Essentially, the concept is an idea or a set of ideas that you want to express through your work, right? In art, we often talk about formal elements and conceptual elements in any work. The formal elements are the things that you can point to and say, there's color, there's black and white, there's value, there's line, there's shape, right? It's the things that sort of make up the composition, right? Concept is sort of what lies beneath the surface. What are the ideas, the emotions, the grander issues in sort of the wider world, if you will, that you want this art communicating to the person who would be looking at it. For most conceptual artists, the concept is based in personal interests or obsessions, or in something that the artist wants to explore precisely because she or he doesn't understand it, right? So concept is usually personal. Right? It wouldn't really work well if an artist, photographer, whomever was to try to incorporate a concept that didn't resonate with them personally. Right? And see, this is part of the thing. It can become very tantalizing, if you will, for a lot of like artists and photographers starting out to want to tackle really big ideas, or to tackle ideas that they think art is supposed to be about, right? As opposed to just thinking about, like, what are the things that resonate for you personally? What are you thinking about at the time that you want to make the photographs? Like, where is your headspace at that moment? And the more specific you can get, the better. So you communicate this concept within the work by choosing to include elements and imagery designed to guide the viewer to think about the things that you want them to think about, and very consciously choosing to not include any elements or imagery that could potentially mislead your audience to think about the wrong things. Now, of course, you're new to this, and so I'm not going to hold you to say the sort of just like stringent adherence to this that, say, I had to deal with when I was in grad school, where the faculty there would often it would come time for a critique of the work that you'd been doing, and it almost seemed like they wanted you to have anticipated every possible way that they could misread your work, because they would try to throw it out there at you and catch you. Right? That's grad school for you. Grad school, in many ways, is just sort of a emotional torture. People playing mind games with you. Grad school, man. But anyway, I won't hold you to that, but I will want you to think about these things and try. And again, it was when we look at the examples from past students, I'll talk about where they're doing some of these things. So what is your concept? I don't know. Why are you asking me? It's like I said, it should be personal. This is your thing, right? So if you're struggling at all, here are some guidelines. What are you interested in? What can you tell us about your interests that we maybe don't already know? Right? That's one of the best ideas, one of the best bits of advice, if I might be allowed to give anyone any advice, for one who is a young artist, photographer, what have you, is to make art that is about something that you're already interested in, that you're already invested in, that you think about a lot, that you study up on. And that if that's the case, if you have paid attention to this thing, if it's something that invades your headspace a lot, you may very well have noticed something about it, whatever that may be, that the rest of us haven't noticed, or at least that you don't hear people talking about as much, right? And that is very often the work you should be making, because it's where your headspace is. It's what you're interested in, and you have a unique perspective about it that will, by the nature of that very thing, make this work much more interesting because of the personal nature of it, but also because we're not seeing something that we've seen a million times. I've taught art for years and years at this point, right? So there are certain things that I see repeated a lot because, again, students are often thinking, well, as an artist, this is what I'm supposed to be talking about. Often big, gigantic ideas like the nature of reality and what is art's place in the world, what, like big ideas like that, and or even just expressing emotions like love, right? Like big, very general things. And as a result, the work can often feel very uninspired because students will often lean on these same kinds of imagery every single time to tell those kind of big, giant stories. But if you've got something much more focused, like this is a thing I am interested in, I spend time thinking about it, I study it, what have you, you're not necessarily going to lean on the same kinds of imagery and symbols and what have you that every single other human being has focused on, because you're focusing on something that is unique to you. So you know the symbols, you know the imagery that's needed to communicate that. And it may be something that people aren't necessarily always putting out there, right? That grabs our attention, keeps us looking and wanting to experience your work all the more. Is there anything that you notice that you don't see many other people paying attention to? Perhaps I should have popped that up before that whole spiel I just gave, right? So I often find that makes for really interesting art to look at. When a student is like, yeah, you know what? I have noticed this particular thing about the world, about this particular thing about ballet, or this particular thing about how college classes work, or this particular thing about people who enjoy reading, whatever. And I don't see a lot of work out there talking about it. I don't hear a lot of people mentioning it. It's something that I have noticed, but I don't hear a lot of people talk about it. If that's the case, that might be something interesting to explore, right? Something that you seem to be noticing that not a lot of other people are noticing. Now, sometimes, though, it can be difficult to work from that direction, right? From concept first, and then thinking about how to communicate that concept. So if you're struggling with that part, right? You're like, I don't know. I have no clue what kind of concept I want to do here. Then if you have an idea of what you would like to photograph, but not why, try working backward. You can think about what you would like to take photographs of, and then think about what ideas, emotions, concepts, what have you, could be symbolized by or expressed by that subject that you want to photograph. Well, you could work backward. If you want to take pictures of, I don't know, colorful balloons getting blown away in the wind. Okay, cool. What might that symbolize for you? What might, are those balloons sort of our fleeting lives that are here for a moment and blaze bright and get and bring joy, agony, what have you, and then are gone, right? Maybe, right? What can you do with that? And then once you've done that, once you've sort of worked backward from the stuff that you want to photograph to then the ideas and the concepts that could communicate, then you can start making some decisions about, okay, well then how do I photograph these balloons in such a way as to get people to think about those things, right? Once you have, I keep running ahead of myself. Once you have a concept, start making a plan for how to communicate it. Make all of your decisions relate back to the concept and consider what you might want to avoid so that the audience isn't accidentally misled. All right. Then I want you, because this is the final, to show off what you've learned. Hopefully you've gained some new skills and knowledge about photography that you didn't possess before. That's a line I always say in this class. Perhaps very little of what you have gotten out of this class was new to you. I don't know. But this is the capstone project of the semester, so it should be the culmination of what you have learned and should show that you, quote unquote, get it. Are you particularly interested in depth of field? Incorporate that into and show that you can control it. Would you blurred or frozen motion communicate your concept well, and do that? Did you really enjoy the experiments with lighting and you want to explore it even more? Excellent idea. Go for it. All of that, right? Your color and or black and white editing choices should also showcase that you understand what you're doing and why as well. I say and or because if you want to do a mix of color and black and white, as long as you can give me a good reason for why you're doing it, then yeah, go for it. That's the end of that. All right, so let's look at some examples from past students then. All right, so we'll look at some documentary photography first. Right? So documentary photography is photography that is meant to showcase people, events, environments, and are meant to document either, well, they're meant to document an event, right? Or events. But that event can be something that is historically significant, perhaps, or something that is important, but it can also just be daily life, right? This particular student was on the hockey team. This is a few years back, and decided to do this series that was going to be a documentary series about what it's like playing hockey, but specifically, conceptually, what he wanted to talk about are the differences between how people conduct themselves before the game as they're getting ready, and then what's happening during the game as the game is going on. And so he took a lot of shots that are sort of as people are preparing and getting ready, getting their game face ready, getting their gear on, practicing before the game, what have you. And he put all of these in black and white. Right? And then, I guess there were more of these than I realized. When it came time for the actual game, allowed there to be color and some really nice saturated color as well. Also, if I go back, there's in a lot of them, particularly the ones where he's in the where the game is actually happening, the ones that are in color, depth of field is what he's sort of playing with, right? There's a lot of stuff that goes out of focus, like here, right? He was shooting through something here that's out of focus. The person is in focus. Right? So depth of field becomes something that he wanted to explore with these as well. And again, it's the contrasting of the student athletes in the moments just prior to playing the game versus in the game itself. This student, their concept was sort of the, how do I put it? The getting lost in the moment, if you will, of, in her case, being a commuter. She had like a good 30-minute drive to or from Bethel to her home. And for her, that drive was always a decompression time, the drive home, right? This series, she even titled it The Drive Home, I think it was something like that. And what she wanted to do was document on her drive home each of the separate roads that she took on the way home, beginning at Bethel and then taking a photograph each time that she would go on to a new road. I mean, showcasing the road. And so, all right. So I was talking a moment ago about what we keep consistent, right? Notice she's staying very consistent she has made a decision, to like stand in the middle of the road, shoot down the length of the road, try to get a good infinite depth of field, and she's tried, it's not always happening, but she's tried to keep the horizon in about the same place so that she's got about the same amount of sky and the same amount of land in each image. Now, it doesn't always work out perfectly, but it was an attempt that she did. Right. And so, and here she is, arriving in her neighborhood. She wanted to communicate the joy of going home, the relief, sort of the sloughing off of stress as you go from road to road to road. Right? And part of that, because she took these photographs not necessarily all on the same day. And I think this one, I think I may have gotten one out of order. I think this might be when I think this was leaving Bethel. All the same, as she was getting closer and closer to home, the images end up becoming brighter and brighter. The clouds clear away. She took these on a number of different days and then went through and picked out the ones that she felt like each one was getting successively happier looking. Then this student did a particularly interesting series of just wanting to photograph the back roads of West Tennessee. And she just wanted to document the sort of randomness of what you find, and in hopes that she could capture something that would showcase West Tennessee, rural West Tennessee, in a way that how do I put it? I'm trying to remember exactly her words. She wanted the depiction to be very pure, if you will, and to not have too much commentary from her being the person who took the photographs. And so she set up a method of photographing that she kept consistent. She would get in her car, she would put on the trip counter and would drive until exactly 12 miles had gone by. Then she would stop, she would get out of the car, and she'd take a picture of whatever she was finding in the vicinity. So whatever happened to be around, sometimes that might be something really cool, like this old, like antebellum looking house here. Sometimes it might be a church. Sometimes it just might be in the middle of the woods somewhere, right? I think at this point she was probably somewhere in Jackson, I want to say, with this like waterfall and whatnot. Right, just driving for 12 miles and taking a photograph of whatever she found. This student, what was the name of this group? Oh, she was working with a group called Young Life, I want to say. I forget exactly, but it was a group that like tries to like help young at-risk teens. I don't want to put, I believe that was the case. But anyway, she says that what she wanted to communicate with this, because this is something she worked with this group for a number of years. And one of the things that always stuck out to her is that at the beginning of each new year, because it was sort of like a year-long program, at the beginning of each year, you get these kids who would come in who'd be either like standoffish or lacking in self-confidence, or if they had self-confidence, it was sort of like false self-confidence that was put on, and many times they would sort of push back and not want to fully participate and join in with what the group was doing. And then by the end, there's always like a big like house party in someone's garage, and to close the whole thing out on the very last night of the program. And she said by the time you get there, the sheer joy that you see on these kids' faces is in such stark contrast to how the whole thing began, that she wanted to capture that absolute joy, and in such a way that she, as the photographer, is sort of disappearing, right? That she wanted, and she had to do some serious like selecting of her photographs to make this happen. She wanted the imagery to always sort of the imagery, the subjects rather, to not even sort of acknowledge that there is a photographer here, right? They are lost and caught up in the moment, enjoying life, enjoying being with each other, enjoying whatever they were doing. Clearly, this happened before COVID. I mean, I guess we are sort of getting back to stuff like this now again, but yeah, this was man, it might even have been the year before COVID. I think these photographs are from 2019 rather. This is probably the closest you get to someone acknowledging the camera, right? Her eyes have just briefly flitted. And so, and in her case, again, things to keep it consistent. She knew that because she belongs here, right? She's not an outsider, and that all these kids know who she is. She'd be able to blend in, right? Then she's taking the photographs whenever she sees a moment of absolute joy, and she was doing so just using the flash of the camera, not setting up any controlled lighting, so that she could catch things very quickly on the fly. And it made for this beautiful little series that I think is doing exactly what she wants to do. All right. That's documentary photography, right? Documenting environments or events. They don't all, oftentimes documentary photography will include people, but as you saw, environments can be included, right? That don't necessarily include a person, where the photographer behind the camera is the implied person, right? Who is certainly documenting, but is also involved in the event being documented. Right? But other documentary photography can document an event and the people involved in that event. Right? So that may be one. That's one choice that you can go for. Second, we talk about narrative photography. Narrative photography is the idea that photographs can tell a story. Right? Sometimes this is done purely by a photographer being in the right place at the right time, right? And capturing an image in front that suggests a larger story going on than just what is in the photograph. There's what's referred to as the moment before and the moment after. Right? In that particular case, a narrative photograph can suggest a narrative by showing you something, and you as the viewer can be like, oh, I know what happened just before this, and I'm getting an idea of what's going to happen after. That's one type of narrative photography. That's not always the easiest thing to capture. So in our particular case, what I'm going to want you to do is to think of how to create a narrative that you can control, right? How do you set up your compositions, your models, what have you, in such a way as to tell a story, again, centered around a theme. This particular student here was fascinated with the ways that, in this particular case, women, but I suppose people in general, can completely and utterly transform their look in such a way as it seems they almost have different personalities depending upon the situation that they're dressing for. And so he got some friends of his to, and it was like, all right, I want you to dress professional, whatever professional means to you. And I'm going to take a photograph of you posing in a way that you feel is professional. And then I want you to put on whatever your outfit is for absolutely going out and partying your ass off. And then I'm going to take a photograph with you posed like that as well. And I'll show that. And then, so he does that, right? And then he edits the contrast and the color to be a lot more garish. Now, things that he did, choices that he made to decided to keep consistent, right? He wanted to make sure that the model was usually always sort of over here toward the left side. He shot on this sort of downtown street that could work both for a professional environment. She looks like she's going to work, right? Or it also works as an environment for where you might be walking the street looking for the next bar or the next party, right? And yet it's the fascination with how much a person changes when the situation that they are dressing for changes and dictates a new outfit that, again, right, we make two completely different assumptions about this person versus this person. That was sort of his concept. This particular series, this particular student had a concept, and the concept very much came first on this, and then they look for ways to communicate it. And they wanted to talk about the ability of people, of human beings, to find joy in even the most harshest of circumstances, maybe even the most depressing moments of life, maybe even the most abusive moments in life. And so she did this series of photographs where she got her little sister, who her little sister is an amazing dancer. And she was like, all right, I want to communicate this idea of finding joy even in the worst of circumstances by having my sister dance very beautifully in an environment that is falling apart, that could represent the ugliness, the abuse, depression, life wanting to sort of fall apart and crumble around you, but dancing anyway and enjoying the dance and finding those moments, like finding a little bit of sun to bask in, even though it looks like you could get tetanus from the environment around you. Finding an old abandoned, crumbling area like this and being like, you know what? It looks like a stage to me. I'm going to get up on that and dance. Gorgeous little piece. I thought it was a great series when she put it out there. This series was the concept was the rituals, or thinking about at least the rituals that young women go through to either pretty themselves up in the morning or to prepare themselves for bed. And so she got a group of her friends, set up a camera in a bathroom, and she kept this very consistent. As you go through, you can tell the camera is pretty much in the same spot. It's the same bathroom, right? There's a little bit of motion. I kind of wish maybe she had a tripod so that all of them could be exactly the same. But anyway, she had her friends come in and she asked each of them to just go through sorry, to just go through their routine they would do in the morning or at night, whatever that would be. I think these may have been roommates. It's very definitely at least friends of hers. And I asked why the little painting here. And that's maybe one element that throws things off a bit for me. She mainly said she put that in there because she wanted some sort of pop of color. The bathroom was just so beige. The painting ends up making me think about things other than what she might be wanting to tell me. But I get her reasoning there at least. Right? This student wanted to do this piece where the thing that she noticed that she didn't necessarily hear lots of other people talking about is that when someone is reading a book, particularly if it is their favorite book, their face often, when they're absolutely lost in the book, their face often betrays their emotional state inside. And so she did a series of photographs. She had really enjoyed the playing around with lighting in the portrait series, and the portrait assignment rather. And so she set up this this little portrait gallery, if you will, in the library, and got a certain number of friends together, asked them what their favorite book was, and asked them to bring their favorite book and to be ready to just sit and read their particularly favorite passage from that book. And so she'd have them sit and read, and she did a few things to keep the series consistent. Everyone is sitting facing the camera, pretty much dead center. They're all in the same area of the library. And as much as possible, she wanted them to keep the book up so that it sort of covers, as I'm saying this, I have one that doesn't do this, but she wanted it for the most part to be covering the mouth. She wanted eyes for the most part. And she would just ask them to sit and read this particularly favorite section of their favorite book. And when she felt like they were completely lost in the moment, that was when she would snap the photograph, hoping as much as possible to get genuine reactions to what they were reading. And I also doing some great like 3-point lighting with it as well. In her case, she set up the hair light, the background light, backlight, whatever you want to call it, directly behind the head of the individuals, which was giving them this nice kind of like halo of light around their heads. This student wanted to do a series on college life. Like, what is the life of a college student from arriving on campus the first day to sort of finally arriving at, I think I understand what my path is and what I want out of life. And how could she then communicate that in a way that wouldn't just be tired and overused? And so her way of doing that was, well, like she was thinking about like, how do I do sort of a point of view? She wanted a point of view of the college student, what they would be seeing, but like doesn't just want to go around just snapping pictures. So she's like the eyes. The eyes are what see these things. If I put a pair of sunglasses or what have you over the eyes, what they're looking at is then reflected. And so some of them are more symbolic, like the student with caution tape being reflected in their sunglasses, being a little more symbolic of sort of the, the warning signs, as you will, if you will, or the dangers of college. And certain other things being a bit more literal, like the friends that you meet, maybe even the loved ones that you meet, or the weight you're going to gain in college from all the snacks that you eat, or just walking around campus. This one here, like we were actually we were actually in a classroom where someone had written up on the board "School sucks." And so she snapped this picture, but then like flipped it in Photoshop or in GIMP in order to make sure that "School sucks" was in the right orientation. It wasn't mirrored to like symbolically showing that someone has figured out the path, the direction that they want to go. Okay, yeah, I guess that's all that I have. So narrative, right? We've looked at a few people who've played around with narratives, with a story that they want to tell. And doing so, there are certain things that they keep consistent. This student is keeping things consistent by very tightly cropping in on the face and getting those reflections of the sunglasses, right? They're the things that we talked about that were kept consistent here, right? To tell a story that focuses on a concept, or documentary photography, again, which is meant to document an event or an environment. That event or environment can be significant in some way, or it could just be everyday life. But what you do with that should also communicate a concept, right? Some sort of idea, feeling, emotion, whatever that you want the person viewing those images to come away with. Okay, this is going to be the only video I'm giving you this week, right? So that you can focus this week on shooting these photographs. I will ask you perhaps to check in with me over the week. Let me know how you're doing with things. But this will be the only video I ask for you to watch, right? Yeah, it's been a great summer. I hope, despite the ridiculousness that was last week, that you have gained something from all of this. And yeah, congrats on whatever you're going to do from this point on. Yeah, I would love to have had you in an actual class where you could have like worked one-on-one more. But that said, it has been a pleasure seeing what you have been doing this summer, and I wish you all the best from here on. All right, take care. Bye.